Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And by the time you're listening to this, Turkey will be in your near future, probably.
Unless you're going to do a news update on the nation of Turkey.
Just
by the time you hear this, Turkey
Tuesday
will have taken over our podcast.
Yeah. Like they haven't invaded yet, but I know by Tuesday they will have. We're joking, and that'll be the thing that, each week this year, some new thing that nobody saw coming happens, and it will be the United States gets overthrown by Turkey, of all places. Like, I don't think isn't it called something else now?
I hope so, because I was going to say, Turkey is still, this is as much of an asshole as I am. I still think Turkey is a really funny thing to name your country. Like, what's your president, the Great Gobbler? Like, it's... It's like, and I wonder if like I wonder if they get pissed off. Like, it's like it's not about the bird. God damn,
there's still Turkey, but technically it's the Republic of Turkey. I don't know why I was thinking that it was one of those countries that like was technically called something else, but everybody still really referred to as Turkey.
The artist formerly known as Turkey.
Turkey, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Turkish, actually. Like, that's the weird thing, is like, Turkey, you think the fucking bird. Turkish, I imagine, like, soldiers with pikes, for some reason. And I have nothing to, like, base that off of. It's just, that's
how you think.
Then they're the ones who hunt the turkeys. Yeah. And
then Turk was a funny guy from Scrubs.
Turkleton, yeah.
Turkleton.
The one funny guy in Scrubs, as we all know. There's only one.
Yeah. I can't give Zach Braff any credit. And then I don't know the name of the actor it's Dr. Cox. I guess I'm not going by the actor's
John
names.
C. McGinley.
And he was that show. Well, no, because then I should know his name too, the janitor guy. Between Dr. Cox and the janitor, those are my favorite characters because they've that's one of the prime examples of like fucking up a show, because they had to make the fucking janitor more of a character, and it's like, that's not necessary. He's great as just this weird. They deserve their time. We never get a leading janitor.
No, they don't. And if there's any advice,
got into his like personal stuff. Yeah, he was way better as like kind of the one-liner, like I'm the asshole, like pissed off janitor.
He has weird fucking psychopath tendencies and conflicts with this one doctor that he hates. That's enough for the show. Yeah, you don't have to fucking, like, I don't need to know that he got married. Like, leave some shit to the imagination. Like,
I do agree with you there, but I didn't watch a lot of the late series.
Well, you don't need to, because that's when it went to shit. Fuck you, Scrubs.
So, yeah, this is weird that we have a podcast about Scrubs and Turkey.
Yeah, the official Scrubs podcast from one dude who has a lot of fucking angry, disappointed feelings in Scrubs, and the other one who's pretty neutral about everything, honestly.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm the Switzerland of...
You're the Sweden, Turkey of Scrubs.
Yeah, Turkey. I don't think Turkey is historically neutral. Again, I am not a great world historian. But
and neither am I. And boy, do I have a topic today for the non-historic.
Well, good, because we're pretty far off the topic that you haven't started yet. But
but just the show. If you haven't heard it before, this is the Non-Essential Podcast where we just tell each other stories. But these days we seem to have anywhere between a 5 to 30-minute preamble before we get to those stories.
Yeah, we tried to get most of that out before the record button this week,
but shit happens. But it's my turn, and like I said, I'm a pretty shitty I'm a bad podcast host, but I'm an even worse researcher. So this one dives into a interesting chapter of history that's kind of hard to tie down and flesh out. It's like, we're going to talk about the 30 Years' War a little bit. But to explain all the complexities of the 30 Years' War with just a week of research, which is really like
we do, yeah.
Which is really like a couple of hours of research when it comes to me.
Yeah.
It's pretty impossible. But it was a time between 1618 and 1648 where the vast majority of Europe was just constantly finding new reasons to start shit with each other. It happened mostly in like Central Europe, but sort of fringe countries would find reasons to get in on it. And it's not just one conflict, even though it's under the umbrella of the 30 Years' War. It was actually kind of like just a bunch of mini wars happening all the time. Like there were a lot of conflicts and a lot of peace treaties that happened during this stretch, but a lot of shit would just kick off again for whatever fucking reason.
So, yeah, it's basically a game of civilization.
Right. Yeah. Well, but to dumb it down even further, because I'm dumber, it's basically a few centuries, like there were a few centuries back in the day where white civilizations were working really hard to develop the formula for what would be the Jerry Springer show. And now to put it in our current timeline, like the last few decades have been the awkward, like wind down portion of the episode where they've broken up the fight, but we all still kind of want to swing at each other, but we're just sort of tired and staring. And now we have nukes, so the analogy falls apart.
Yeah, so like it's when the white trash guy picks up the chair and everybody's like, wait,
no.
Yeah, chairs are involved now. We should probably we're at a standstill here.
So like when you're looking at the 30 Years' War, it's a fascinating but kind of overwhelming time in history to study. It's one of the few notable conflicts where, despite the many reasons for why the fighting kept happening, and there were a lot of religious differences, but it was also a lot of desperate pushes from various empires to try to establish their positions and holds in Europe. It's one of the few conflicts where by the end of it, nobody totally won or lost, except maybe the Habsburg monarchy, but fuck those guys.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about them once on the show, and I don't remember in what context.
Yeah, I even wrote here, I don't know what they did, but they look and sound like pieces of shit, so fuck them.
Yeah. I want to say that those were the ones involved with that the topic I did about where their soldiers got drunk and accidentally started a war with themselves and then had to retreat from themselves.
That probably happened in this time frame.
Yeah, probably. I think you're right, but like you said, we research topics for 2-3 hours tops, and then I forget about them the week after we do the show. But
I never
they're in there somewhere.
Yeah, I never promised this was an educational show. We kind of just bastardize educational shows to make this happen. So the conflict ultimately ended with the peace of Westphalia, and which was just sort of everybody, it came from mutual exhaustion. Everybody was just like, oh, fuck, we've been fighting forever. But when you look at this whole thing, this 30-year clusterfuck, you could probably find months worth of podcast stories. Yeah. So I'm going to pick one almost at random. Jörg Jenatsch was born in 1596 in what historians believe was Samadin, Switzerland. He spent his childhood in Planta, which, if you look it up, looks like a total Switzerland stereotype. Just pretty fields and hills, and it feels kind of Truman Show-ish. It doesn't seem like an actual place. It feels more like a set. He then went to study theology at Zurich and Basel. In 1617, he became the Protestant pastor of Scarens. What is Scarens? I have no fucking idea, because when you look up this shit, nothing is ever just a town in the 1600s.
No, it's the most confusing,
It's a municipality. It's a region. It's a fucking...
It included the 4 houses on Oak Street, and then the town plaza, like 15 miles to the west, and
you know, up in France, but also the capital of Germany. Like it doesn't, nothing fucking makes sense when you history doesn't make sense. That's the moral. So he became this Protestant pastor, and it was a time where Protestants and Catholics were more than willing to fuck each other up at the drop of a hat. Becoming a religious leader back then meant that it was a climate where you would have to become a political leader as well. And our friend George, I don't know if it was actually George or Jorg, but I'm going to call him George because it's funny to me.
I like Jörg
Jenatsch. And if you look up photos of him, it's even funnier. But don't look up the end of this story because it's the funniest part. And he strongly took the side of the Venetian and Protestant party, aligning himself with the Salis family, and putting him at odds with the Catholic and Spanish supporting faction, which was headed by the Planta family, that was also pro-Habsburgs, which I don't need to remind you were probably punk bitches.
They were. I double-checked. Habsburg is the army that got drunk and fought themselves and then scared themselves off, and then the invading army marched in a couple days later and found a bunch of dead people in an unguarded fort, and were like, hey, cool. So that's Habsburg, and that was back in May of this year. I don't know the episode number, but yeah, same people.
So it's, what was going down in Switzerland at this point was really just kind of mafia shit, if you think about it. It's like, you join a family, be willing to die for that family's profit, and maybe you'll get a taste too if you don't die.
And that's what I was going to say. And I can't say for this person, maybe you'll get into it and maybe not because it's not that important. But in a lot of these situations, you wonder, you said he sides with the Protestants in this family. And it's like, well, was he Protestant? Or a lot of these people end up just siding with the one side that they think they can get further with, like, which will be better for them.
You are very, you might have some psychic powers, but we'll get to that. Because like I said, he was a pastor. That's what he went to school for and stuff. So he, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say Jorg of the jungle was, sincere at first about his Protestant beliefs. And the thing he was really into was being anti-Spanish and anti-Catholic. And he became a clerical overseer for the Protestants. And it's one of the head figures of the anti-Spanish faction. This gave him all sorts of neat opportunities like supervising the torture of the archpriest Nicola Rusca of Sondrio. Say that as if you should know who he is, but... Oh, yeah, that guy.
He was a good guy or a bad guy, one of the two.
Backup quarterback for the Miami Dolphins in 18th. No. It also let him and his peers in their area's court, by being a overseer, him and his peers could just decide that members of the Planta family were outlaws now, as far as their courts were concerned, because fuck the Plantas. When a popular court in the region's capital, Chur, it's either Chur or Chur, it's Chur, and turns out Switzerland has some fucked pronunciations, so if I'm fucking it up, sorry.
Yeah, it's probably Roar or Brr, yeah.
So when the popular court in that region was like, what? You can't just say they're outlaws now because you don't like them. It basically threw everything in Switzerland into anarchy. Nobody could fucking agree on anything because this one group was just like, Spanish people are illegal. Fuck them.
And that's sounds familiar.
Right. I even, in my notes, I said nobody could fucking agree on anything, that's basically America in my entire lifetime. Taking advantage of this confusion, they even call this period the confusion of Graubünden. which was,
it was just one single guy that like normally wasn't confused, but he's like, man, even I don't even know what's going on. Yeah.
I don't fucking, what? Do I go Protestant? Do I go Catholic? I usually have the answer. So it's 1620, everything's fucked up, and the Spanish governor of Milan coordinated an uprising that resulted in the massacre of a number of Protestants in the Valtellina. The Valtellina was a fertile valley that was of considerable importance for the two sides in the entire 30 Years' War conflict, and not just this sort of Swiss religious conflict that was happening. So there were a lot of people, but there were kind of two main sides in this war. So, and it basically involved Spain, Venice, and France. And it
just fringe people jumping in and out, siding with the various.
Yeah. It's worth noting that this, the Valtellina, despite all their efforts, Switzerland would never regain control of it. This was the one time they had this really valuable area, and they lost it in this massacre. More importantly, to our friend George, he was pissed that over 300 Protestants were killed in this strike from the Spanish party. And being a fucking maniac, as it turned out, in 1621, he murdered the head of the Planta family, Pompeius. Him and his forces attacked Planta's castle in Reitberg. It's said that Pompeius attempted to hide in the tower with his dog, but the dog's whimpering gave him away. What's weird about that is he had a daughter there too, who he didn't try to hide with, I guess. He was like, "No, the dog." Just like
ugly, and he didn't mean to like grab the dog. He just couldn't tell the difference in the dark, like in the confusion.
So they say in front of his daughter, Planta was pinned to the castle floor with an axe, and his heart was removed.
I tend to think once you're pinned to the floor with an axe, that your heart, like, you probably don't need it anymore anyway.
But it's a free heart, yeah. I'm not gonna. What? He don't need it. Jörg had other violent incidences back then, and even Protestants were like, dude, fucking chill. He wouldn't, though, and he was eventually removed as a pastor. From then on...
I like that it's eventually. It's like, we let the pastor murder for a while, but...
I mean, we kind of do that shit now. Not with murder, but there's a lot of, like...
Oh, yeah.
We'll let him get away with some shit. From then on, Jörg would act solely as a soldier and what Wikipedia calls a military entrepreneur, which sounded like mercenary.
Yeah.
But military entrepreneur sounds nice. And it's probably what George really wanted to be anyway during this. And like I said, the 38 Years' War was a great time to do just that. There were conflicts all over, looking for an eager fuck who didn't care much about his own life, and more importantly, didn't care about the lives of those around him. Like, the dude killed his own colonel in a duel in 1626. He did not give a fuck.
And the weirdest part was it was just a disagreement over who gets the last pizza roll.
It could be that fucking... I mean, you joke, but people found reasons to... Like, we're gonna fight to the death. Like, for the most mild shit. I say that's like back then, but people are that way now. If you're in the right bar at the right time. George rose through the ranks to major and eventually became a colonel of his own regiment and began in recruiting and expanding his company. But at some point he would be imprisoned for insubordination, and somewhere during this, he claimed that it was like during this period that he converted to Roman Catholicism.
Check and mate.
Yeah. He turns out he really didn't give a shit. Afterwards, he would join up with a French campaign to drive the Spanish out of the Valtellina, and it worked. But but then he was pretty pissed to learn that the French had no plans to return the Valtellina to them. So,
yeah.
Because the French are like, this is valuable real estate. Why would we?
This is very nice.
This is a very nice field. I can grow cigarettes here.
Long ones with stems.
Long ones with... In 1635, he announced his religious conversion publicly, but then joined a secret alliance known as the Kettenbund, which included Swiss, Catholic, and Protestant leaders that were negotiating with the Spanish and the Austrians. You see, Jörg didn't give a shit about loyalties to religion or really anything at this point. In fairness, most of the people involved in this conflict in Central Europe really didn't give a fuck beyond their own self-interest.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that. Most of wars, religion and, I don't know, religion is the number one excuse for war throughout history, but it's always an excuse for war. It's never actually about religion, or very rarely.
Right. And Jörg was no different. He was interested in power and making alliances with anybody who would give him greater control, so he would help one side, and then when it's like, oh, fuck, you won't give me the Valtellina, I'll go help the other side that might. The Kettenbund launched a strike that pushed the French out again, and Jörg began to push for Spain and Austria to return the Valtellina under his sovereignty. He also wanted a noble title from them, and they would knight him for his efforts, and he would gain considerable influence on the region, becoming basically a dictator, but they did not give the Valtellina back.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Shocked and appalled.
But being, basically Switzerland's head asshole, apparently seemed to be enough for Jörg, finally. But when you live like he did, you kill people and align yourself with whoever the fuck on a whim, there's a good chance you're never going to be careful enough to avoid your comeuppances. And damn did Jörg have a comeuppance. So on January 24th, 1639, a band of men came to the capital city of Kur, where Jörg was having a party in the town's carnival. Carnival back then, meant people were constantly dressing up and stuff. It's less kind of like
carnival down in like Louisiana, not like carnival.
Yeah, like they're not just like Ferris wheel. It's like these people are getting really fucked up and kind of scary.
Though they did have Ferris wheels and elephant ears.
Yeah. So nobody thought anything of this band of men and the bear that was walking with them. And I doubt anybody thought anything of it first when it turned out that man was wearing a bear costume, and he asked if they could join Jörg's party. And I doubt anybody thought anything of it at first when that man in a bear suit pulled out an axe. And then they probably thought about it a little bit when that man in a bear suit began to hack Jörg to death with that axe. And after that bear and those merry men left, the carnival folk were probably like, wait, what the fuck?
Where's the end of this magic trick? When do you put the blanket over it and he's back in one piece?
And that's how he died. A man in a bear suit fucking
with an axe.
Chopped him away with an axe, yeah. The most likely culprit, they think, was Rudolf von Planta, who was the son of the murdered Pompeius. And to make it appropriately legendary, they like to say that the axe was the very same that slew his father all those years ago.
I was hoping you were going to say that the guy's dog, he was like fed to that very same dog. But the axe thing would be, that's adequate.
Yeah.
The bear suit puts it over the top, though.
That's what's funny about it. It's just
especially when you
that
put it
image.
In the context of it, you said this was what, you said 18...
It's 1639.
1639. So yeah, you got to keep it in that context too. It sounds like a full body bear suit, but in 1639 standards, which, yeah.
So he just looked like a bear, probably. They probably just took a whole fucking bear hide.
Right.
And put it on this fucking guy. And then just imagining Smokey the Bear finally having enough and taking his rage out on a man.
Where do you conveniently stow an axe that you can pull it out in a dramatic and like dangerous fashion?
I mean, 1600s.
Like,
you didn't have to hide your axe.
Yeah. Hey, it's Claude, the lumber bear.
Yeah. So they say it's Rudolph von Planta. I kind of prefer to think there was just some axe-wielding grizzly out there in the world who wanted to get rid of somebody.
Maybe it was just an axe murderer. Like, it had nothing. You say it's comeuppance, but it could have been just random happenstance. Like, this band of guys, they traveled town to town killing the top dog. They didn't even know who he was. They were just like, who's the guy in charge? Cool. Yeah. Ignore the axe and the bear.
Yeah.
Like,
so
the only... I don't know. I'm trying to sit here and decide if it's better that he was killed by a man in a bear suit with an axe, or if they had actually trained a real bear to use an axe.
That's what I'm saying, is like, if there's... We don't actually know. They never caught the killer. It could have been.
It could have been a real bear,
Yeah. And that's the image we're left with. You know, it is just a theory at this point. We know a bear and an axe were involved in this murder. We don't know if there was a man inside. So that just seems like conspiracy theory to me.
I think they changed it. I don't think it was a full-on bear costume. I think it was the bear fucker costume from Super Troopers. Like, I don't know if you've seen that movie or not, but... Yeah, the part where he's as a distraction, there's a bear costume, but just half on, and it's like he's humping it. And like... I like to just picture that, like each thrust of the axe, it's like the bear's head's bobbing up and down like they're in the middle of going at it. And they couldn't say like, oh man, our top guy was killed by bear fucker. It was like, he was killed by a bear with an axe. Like, that's pretty badass, right? Like,
I feel like that's how, that's a boss fight in Metal Gear Solid. Like, God damn it, I got killed by bear fucker.
What if it was a Yogi the Bear costume? Like, he kept the axe in his picnic basket.
I've often wondered if Yogi the Bear, what Yogi the Bear the assassin would look like.
Nobody would suspect it.
I would. Like, I don't trust bears. I think they're pretty amazing, but they're not even if they've got machines.
Like a bow tie and it's just like a floating collar, no shirt, but they just have a shirt collar. That doesn't disarm you a little bit.
Yeah. So for all of Jörg's military moves, all his conniving, all his murdering, all his impact in this, vast, long European conflict, what we remember him for is how he got murdered by a bear with an axe. And that's the image I want to leave you with.
Yeah. That's a pretty great, like, back then, people like, really people anywhere in any kind of power back then, you're not usually living a long, healthy life and dying of old age. You're getting murdered. So if that's going to have to be your end, like, yeah, bear suit axe guy, like, there you go. That's a legacy that your family can be proud of.
I wouldn't be proud of it. But, like, you don't get to be proud of it. Like, very few of us get, like, a genuinely cool death. Like, at the least you can ask for is make it interesting. Yeah.
60 years later, there's some guy old man walking down the hall with his grandkid, and grandson says, "Who's that portrait?" And you're like, that's your great-great-grandfather George. He was killed by a bear with an axe.
He was a real asshole until a bear showed up and stopped him.
And that's your great-grandmother. She was killed by a squirrel. Stupid history, always erasing the women from
killed by a squirrel. No, not a squirrel costume, a fucking squirrel.
Just a squirrel. Yeah.
Squirrel with a Walter PPK. Fucking shot her right in the heart.
That's the only way that story could be better, is if that whole family they have a long line of being killed by either animals or people dressed as animals. Like Like it's mixed and matched. It's both. But that's just how it's like Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. How it's a long tradition of dying in battle. There's this dying by mascot, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. For all my shit with like my obsession with bad mascots, this will probably be how I die. I'll go to the wrong fucking baseball game and that crazy crab will fucking
nunchucks. It'll murder you with nunchucks.
Knowing him, it'll have some stupid like giant fucking scissors, like those giant scissors they use to cut ribbons at like town events and shit, and like grand openings. It's dull as fuck, but scary. It'll take a long time. It'll be very embarrassing that I can't outrun a dude in a crab costume.
I give you credit this week because, like, the whole time the story that you're telling it, and I keep thinking, like, man, somebody needs to make a Goodfellas or a Godfather that happens with, like, in castles, because that's what this all sounded like up until then, and that's pretty badass. Like, instead of waking up in a horse head in the bed, like, just having your goons roll up and like siege a castle, just a band of. And so it's like, yeah, it's pretty. Like the whole time I'm picturing this as like a movie like that, and then it's like, and then it goes from being a shit. It's bad. Why can't I think of the Goodfellas director? The like Scorsese, yeah. So it goes from being a Scorsese flick to being a Tarantino flick very quickly there at the end. Like
I would die for Scorsese to make George's movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, God, dude, like that. I was gonna say, like, mafia shit is really interesting, but like, for as common as like hits and death was in that world, like, there's nothing like this show, where we talk about like very weird, like there weren't weird assassinations too often. Like a lot in so much how they were done. There's a lot of mysteries and stuff in there. There's fascinating stories to be told, but nobody ever got shot in the head from a guy just like dressed up as the Oregon State Duck, Or I guess Oregon State is Oregon State is the Beavers, but them too. How fucking great that would be. But I want the Hitman video game, and
yeah, that's what this is exactly.
And that is the spirit of this.
But now I'm thinking of like the Dexter reboot, which I never watched that show, but I know, I'm familiar with it. But like now you've got a Dexter, but his whole thing is he has to do his serial killing of bad guys dressed in a different mascot costume each week. Like it's always got, even if it doesn't fit, like it's not it's not like, oh, we're killing this guy at a football game. They'll be like on a crab boat fishing, and all of a sudden a speedboat zooms up with like the Brutus Buckeye, and it's like, oh shit, here comes the mascot. Like,
ah, damn it, he's back. Get the harpoon gun. All right. But yeah, that's what I got this week.
I like it.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. Yeah, I got that Steve Gibbs stamp.
It's not worth anything, but you got it.
Yeah, it's worth roughly 30 listens a month. But yeah, I don't know. Next week's Thanksgiving, so.
Yeah, we certainly won't be recording, at least not on Thursday next week.
Yeah. I got to work all that week, too. I got to work Thanksgiving and the day after, so.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about, like, the day after. Yeah, good luck. Like, I hope you survive. And I don't mean that sarcastically this time. Next time I will.
Next time I won't mean it. That's the nicest thing you've ever said. It's a week from now, my good.
I honestly hope you live at least another week. Yes.
So yeah,
I think that's on a Hallmark card somewhere. But
yeah. So I think we're going to take a week off, but this one's planned. Go, well, I would say go enjoy your Thanksgiving, but you probably shouldn't go anywhere right now because.
You can drive around by yourself or your immediate household. If you want that, like, travel experience, just drive in circles listening to our show.
Yeah, just get a Discord room dedicated to your annoying family members and just put some headphones on, and to listen to them every time you feel a little lonely this holiday. That's actually a good plan. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope you guys have a good Thanksgiving. We'll take that week off and then we'll be back with more shit.
Yep.
It's that time of the year where we get even more excuses to put this show off. Right.
Fondness makes the podcast grow stronger. I don't know.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Did you say fondness makes the podcast?